Man, doesn't that just get you pumped up? Little dad rock for you, little throwback, little classic. You know, when I hear this song, I think it's got the ultimate pump-up song. Don't you just feel pumped up right now? Feel like it's fourth down, 2 minutes to go, a couple yards off the end zone. Nick Foles trots over. How about a little Philly special, you know? Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'm like, yes. And then you read the lyrics and you find out it's about two people hooking up, and it's kind of ruins the whole thing. I don't really know what that's all about, but basically in our culture, it has become a defining song of belief and believing, you know, just kind of like, yes, we can do it. It's kind of like our culture's fascination with belief right now. I don't know if you notice this, but believe and belief is everywhere. If you left here right now, you can get online and you can buy a couple throw pillows that say believe, because everybody needs those. I can tell a couple of ladies in the room are like, watch it. Because you probably got a couple. Okay, how about some t-shirts? You want to buy some t-shirts? How about some bumper stickers? Get some on your car. Of course, there's all these memes out there. A couple interesting stuff from Yoda about beliefs, some stuff with unicorns. And of course, if Chuck Norris gets involved in it, you know it's a thing, right? Belief is everywhere. Craft markets are predicated on the idea of taking a piece of wood, shaping it into letters, and spelling out the word believe, right? And you put the little exclamation point with a little heart or a star at the bottom. You stick it on your mantle, and that's like a period piece right there. It's art. All right, I know. The men are like, yes. The women are like, watch it. Okay, because I got this at home. But you know, just like we've taken the word blessing and we've converted it to mean something like lucky or fortunate, we've taken this word belief and we've softened it into something like wish. This soft and mushy type of sentiment of like dreaming and fairy tales. Like the soul of Oprah Winfrey just spit up on America. You know, I mean, just like, because it's prevalent, it's like everywhere. If I just believe in it, I know it can happen. If I just believe everything, you know what? I place at the feet of Josh Groban all the guilt for this, okay? Because you know what I'm talking about. Josh Groban, about, you know, middle of September every year is when they start the Christmas music. And then you turn on the radio and you hear this like, Polar Express is out there, you know, and it's just like, you have everything you need if you just believe. It's garbage, okay? It's total trash, stereophonic garbage. Everything you need if you just believe, and that's the popular idea out there, just believe in your heart. And, you know, maybe I'm being nitpicky here. I think there's a big difference. Believing is not a feeling, okay? It's not just a feeling. And you might say, look, hey, John, chill out a little bit. You know, you're a pastor. Wouldn't you be okay with people being excited about belief and believing? But here's the problem, okay? It leaves the rest of us feeling like, okay, I don't get it. You know, so you come to our church and you sit in one of our campuses somewhere and you see people like getting into worship, or you hear about stuff, or the person gets up there, he starts talking about the Bible, and you see everybody else feeling something about belief, and then you feel like, well, am I feeling what they're feeling? Is it a feeling? Is belief a feeling? And this is what I want to talk about today. Belief is not a feeling, it's a decision, okay? It's an action. You do something with it. It's not something you wait around to feel. A lot of us wait around to feel. And so I'm speaking to the person that's ever felt locked out of an experience because everybody else is feeling something and you don't. You feel like you're chasing unicorns. You know, like where is this and when is this ever going to happen to me? Because belief, when it comes down to it, is a decision. It's not a feeling. And so for our purposes today, I want to make sure that we understand the difference between the two. It's not Webster's, not Merriam-Webster dictionary type of thing. This is more of my humble opinion. This is the way I read it. In our culture, when we see the word belief, we think of certain ideas which lead to feelings and kind of has just like a sentiment behind it, you know, like an essence. So when we're talking about belief, it's like that idea of like, oh, just believe in your heart and everything you'll ever wish for will come true. And you know, the realist in us looks at this and we're like, is that really true? You know, because there's stuff I believed that would happen that didn't happen. And that's why I want to say, well, there's a difference between belief and, in our culture, faith. Faith is different. Faith takes ideas and then makes decisions with them, plots out actions, and because of these actions, has stories afterwards to refer back to and says, look what my faith did. And that's where we want to focus, because a belief put into action becomes faith. That's what we want. We don't want to wait around for a feeling. We want to go ahead and make decisions that we can look back on later and say, okay, well, that is where faith started in my life. Great example of this comes from the life of Charles Blondin. Charles Blondin was a tightrope walker back in the 1800s, long time ago. He was a French tightrope walker, because if you're going to be a tightrope walker, you might as well be the best, right? So there he is, a tightrope walking, and he came to America, looked around for a little bit, kind of performed for a little bit, and went up to Niagara Falls and saw this beautiful, if you've ever been to Niagara Falls, it's the most amazing geological feature you've ever seen in your life. This water is just falling, hundreds of feet. The wind coming off of those waterfalls about 75 miles an hour. It's crazy, just the features that are there. And so he looked at this and he said, I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna stretch a rope across the falls. 2-inch wide rope, 1,300 feet across Niagara Falls. And he didn't just walk it. It was how he walked it. The first time out, he went out and he brought a chair, sat on a chair on the tightrope, and drank some champagne. Not all of it, just some of it. Second time out, he took this gigantic camera, because cameras were like the size of refrigerators back then. He's balanced it on a rope, took a picture of the crowd. So pretty soon that crowd becomes thousands, 10,000s of people are just watching him on both sides of the falls. It was in newspapers. It was a national phenomenon. He put a wheelbarrow out there at one point. He was in shackles at one point. He put a large sack over his entire body and walked blindfolded. Okay, blindfolded. The next time he went out, he did backflips. Backflips? I can't even do a backflip on my trampoline. And this guy's doing it on a 2-inch piece of rope. So he does all this stuff. One of the biggest things he did, he took out a table, chairs, and a stove. A stove, people, and balanced them all on a piece of rope 2 inches wide, cooked himself an omelet, sat down and ate it. That's insane. So everybody's beside themselves. They're just, people were actually literally fainting, okay? So he comes over to the side, to the Canadian side, and he says, hey, you guys see me do some amazing stuff out here, haven't you? And they're like, yeah, Some French dude's there with his little boom box in the 1800s going, don't stop believing, Hold on to the feeling. So there it is, right? They're all excited. They're all pumped up. He's like, hey, do you believe I can go across this thing with someone on my back? And they're like, yeah, you can do it. And he goes, which one is the first to try it? Total crickets. No one said anything. In fact, he had to take his manager across on his back. But see, here's the thing. Would you? See, I got an excuse. I had a little pact with myself. I said, I'll never climb on some guy's back. That's just kind of like my deal. But even if I didn't say that, I'm not so sure I would get involved in something like this. And here's the question, okay? This is so important. Did they really believe him if no one was willing to go? Do you see the difference here between feeling and doing? We can all wait around for feelings, but it's the doing that's the most important. Is it really belief if we never decide to do it and really practice it? There's a huge difference between watching and doing, huge difference between feeling and doing. And that's why we want to take a couple weeks to talk about faith and belief. We all want the feeling of faith. When I talk to people, especially people that come to me and say, I don't know, John, I just felt so stale recently. I just feel like it's all in my head, is this really faith? I just feel like I haven't heard God or felt his nudge or is he really there? And so the question is it all in my head? My answer is usually, yeah, Yeah, if you're not practicing it, if you're not putting it into some sort of risky practice, your faith will just sit inside your head because that's all it is. Faith comes alive when we put our beliefs to work. And that's why so many of us feel disappointed with our faith. We feel far from God because we've played it safe and we've embraced warm, fuzzy faith and not risky faith. We watch instead of do. And you can believe anything in the safety of your own mind, but when you live out your beliefs, that's when things get risky. And it requires us to take a leap of faith. You've heard this phrase before. That's what it implies, is that faith doesn't come without risk. You can't have faith without risking something. Because faith becomes real when we do something with it. I mean, think about it. For many of us, now, there's plenty of people out here thinking, okay, I'm not sure what I believe yet. I'm still trying to figure that out. And then there's others of us who have actually crossed the line of faith at some point. You said, look, I'm putting my trust in Jesus. But think about this for a minute. That's probably the last time you've ever made a leap of faith. That shouldn't be. It shouldn't be the last time we've ever actually had large amounts of faith to put in something and think, wow, I did something risky. It should be an ongoing practice. Like, and you know, it's not huge things. It's not like, oh, let's have faith enough to start a mission or let's raise millions of dollars. Or it's just the little things, putting into practice what we know we believe. Like when I was in my young 20s, I worked at Olive Garden. That enough was a faith move. Okay, so I worked there. I was a waiter. Actually, you know, it was a great time. Had an awesome time there. Got to know some people. Had a good experience there and everything. And so I'm tipping out one night. And so when you tip out, you kind of count up the tips that you have. You put it in the computer, and you give 10% to the busboys. So I was there tipping out, and I'm adding up. And the shift manager comes over to me, and he says, "Hey, can we talk, bro?" You know, it's like that shift manager type of thing. So I was like, uh-oh, what? He said, yeah, I noticed that you're reporting all of your tips. And I'm thinking, that's a bad thing? Yeah? Well, yeah, you're not supposed to report all your tips. You're supposed to only report about 40% of your tips. You just keep the rest. Because, you know, you don't want the IRS to have, like, all your money. And I was like, okay. And, you know, it's everybody does it. So don't worry about it. Just report 40% and everything will be good. And now here's the thing. You know, at that age, I wasn't a Boy Scout. I wasn't like the perfect person. There were lots of areas that I messed up in. But the thing that I kept running into, I was like, well, wait a second. If I know deep down in my heart that if I honor God in the small things, he'll honor me with the big things. And especially with money, if I'm gonna lie about money, how is God ever gonna bless me financially if I lie about the small things? So I looked at him and I said, yeah, I don't think I can do that. Like, if it's asking me how many tips I've made, how much tips I've made, I'm gonna put in how much tips I've made. And he goes, look, John, you're kind of messing up everything else because everybody else reports 40% and you reporting 100% throws off the average. And we're gonna get audited. And I was like, really? Just because I'm reporting my tips? Do you really want me to lie about something as an employee? Well, what else will I lie about? So he's like, well, it's up to you, but I'm just telling you, you're gonna mess things up if you keep doing it. And so at that point, I had to think to myself, okay, so my faith is telling me to be honest, and this shift manager is telling me to be dishonest. Who do I listen to? And you know, there was a part of me is like, what's the big deal anyhow? I'm gonna get all these taxes back anyhow because I don't really make that much because I'm young and poor. But I just remember that little voice inside my head that said, hey, if you're gonna follow Jesus, you probably should do things the way he does them. And so I just kept reporting my tips at 100%. With apologies to the shift manager. And guess what? I pretty much got let go. They kept whittling down my hours, giving me less and less hours. And of course they can't say, well, it's because you're not dishonest. You know, they just kind of let me go over time. But here's the thing. See, what I did is I took a step. I started out where I was. I knew that I had to be somewhere, but that seems kind of crazy and scary to not listen to your shift manager and now you're not gonna have money because you're not gonna have a job. But I took a leap and I leaped into the unknown and it was kind of scary for a week or two because I thought, what am I gonna do? And then I started thinking through, all right, God, so if I'm having less hours, I started picking up some side work with helping people do some odd jobs and some landscaping. And then I thought, oh man, you know, I can make a business out of this. So I made a business out of it and it took off like crazy. I had sent out flyers all over the place, especially to like rich people who like paid me lots of money to do ridiculous stuff, Like, hey, can you do this? Yeah, I didn't even know how to do it. I'll look it up and I'll figure out how to do it, and you pay me for it, I'm fine. So I wound up making thousands of dollars that summer, so much more than I would have ever made at this other job. And I was employing people and having these gigantic lunches, and it was awesome. I was so fulfilled. And I thought back to myself, I said, man, without that risk, without that leap, and then landing on the other side and thinking, wow, God really blessed this because I did it the right way. See, that's what we're talking about when we talk about faith. So no longer do I have to rely on whether or not I believe certain things in my head. I can look back on that experience and say, no, God guided me through this really cool example. So I want us to look at the scriptures, especially how this plays out in the life of Peter, the Apostle Peter. Because God moves in the lives of people who take risks with their faith. In fact, Hebrews 11:6 says, without faith, it's impossible to please God. So what I'd like for us to do is I'd like for us to look up a story about Peter. It's on Matthew chapter 14 in your Bibles, at your seats there. You can turn to page 746. Grab your phones. Turn to Matthew chapter 14. We're going to look at starting in verse 22 and on. And this is such a cool story because Jesus has had kind of a tough week. It's been a difficult time for him. He's wanted to get away alone, and all these people are following him. So then he winds up preaching to them, and then he winds up feeding them miraculously. So he's pretty tired. And at the end of that, they're all like, hey, let's make you king by force. We're going to take you and put you on the throne of Israel. And Jesus is like, oh man, you guys totally didn't get what I just said to you. And so he has to very quickly get rid of his disciples and head up onto the hill and pray. In verse 22, it starts out, it says, immediately after he was preaching to them, Jesus insisted his disciples get back in the boat. There's a strong word there, insisted his disciples get back in the boat. It's almost like, hey, look, they're trying to make me king by force. Quick, go, get out of here. I'm going to dismiss the crowd and just get away and just get away from people for a while. That's Jesus, he just needed to get away from people just for a little bit, because we all do, He insisted that his disciples get back in the boat and cross to the other side of the lake while he sent the people home. After sending them home, go home. He went up on the hills by himself to pray, and night fell while he was there alone. Meanwhile, the disciples were in trouble far away from land, for a strong wind had risen, and they were fighting heavy waves. About 3 o'clock in the morning, Jesus came toward them walking on the water. We'll get into this in a second because that's crazy. Verse 26, when the disciples saw him walking on the water, they were terrified. In their fear, they cried, it's a ghost. But Jesus spoke to them at once. Don't be afraid, he said. Take courage, I am here. Then Peter called to him, Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come to you walking on the water. Yes, come. He's a man of few words at this moment. So Peter went over to the side of the boat, and he walked on the water toward Jesus. But when he saw the strong wind and waves, he was terrified and began to sink. Save me, Lord, he shouted. Jesus immediately reached out and grabbed him. You have so little faith, Jesus said. Why did you doubt me? When they climbed back in the boat, the wind stopped and the disciples worshiped him. You really are the Son of God, they exclaimed. So this is a fun passage. It's very quirky. It's kind of interesting. You got Jesus on a hill. He's praying. He sees them struggling. And in this area, the Sea of Galilee was known to have these really quick storms just come up. And they're like crazy storms, wind and waves and all kinds of stuff. So Jesus says, I'll go down and help them. So think about this for a minute. It's the middle of the night. It's going to be in the middle of the sea. And here he comes walking in on water. He had to know this would freak them out. And so I think sometimes when we think of Jesus, we think of this very detached, stoic, like, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Like he's British, and just above everything. But there's Jesus, seeing them strain. He's had a pretty difficult time of it. And he's thinking, and I don't want to suppose what Jesus is thinking, but you got to wonder if he's saying to himself, oh, this will freak them out. Let's do this. So he just steps on the water and be like, I wonder what Peter's going to do. And see, I always think of him walking on some like flat lake, right? But it's a storm. So he's like walking up, he's walking down, he's going over waves. And you see this person like, no wonder they thought it was a ghost. And so a bunch of them are like, what's going on? And remember, this boat's kind of a big boat. It's about 4 feet deep in the middle. There's about 15 people that can fit on this thing at any one time. And so they're all looking. And Peter looks and he goes, hey, is that you, Jesus? Creepy. Jesus answers. It's not reflected in the text here, but in the original text, the way that he answers, he goes, I am, which is what God called himself in the Old Testament. When they asked, hey, God, what's your name? He says, I am. So there's something deep here, like, oh, he just said, I am. Do you think he means? Yeah, I think he means. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. Hey, so if it is you, Jesus, tell me to come to you. What the heck kind of question is that? Like, why is he doing that? Seriously, do you ever think about this? Hey, tell me to come to you. No, if John's in the boat, me, John the second, because there's another John. So here I am, John the second. Call me John 2. So there I am in the boat, and I look out there and I see Jesus. Hey, find out if it's Jesus. Hey, Jesus, is that you? I am. Oh, wow. Okay. Jesus, would you mind answering a couple security questions? Your mother's maiden name, your family's first pet, and the first car you ever drove. Answer that. Okay. Well, it's clearly Jesus. Okay, I'm not getting into the water at that point. I'm saying, okay, Jesus, it's you. You want to get in the boat with us? Because if I go out to you, I'm going to get wet. So come on in. Why wouldn't he do that? Like, why would he say, hey, if it's Jesus, if it's you, come on in the boat? He says, no, I want to come to you. And see, this is what I love about Peter. He's got so much faith. And see, this is the thing. Remember, it's a big boat, 4 feet deep in the middle. It's not like you can go to the edge of the boat and be like, okay, let me just try. Oh, hey, it's like ground out there. Oh my gosh, hey guys, look at this. Look at me. It's not like that at all. It's a large boat, so he's got to be, because if he went to the side of the boat, they'd be like, whoa, Peter, where are you going? And they have to like balance out. So he has to literally go like, boom, into the water. It's that feeling of, you're water skiing or whatever, and you got your life jacket on, you're jumping in the water, you're like, is it cold? Is it going to be deep enough? He just jumps. That's what I love about this. He gets in it. Now think about this for a minute. Peter is the only person in the history of humanity, this side of the grave, that will ever know what it's like to walk on water, because he jumped. And so somebody arguing with him later, like, well, maybe you thought you saw Jesus rise from the dead, and maybe it was all in your head. You'd be like, no, actually, guess what? I walked on water, and I remember it because I did it. I didn't think about it. I didn't sing about it. I didn't have everything you need if I just believe. It wasn't that. It was something I did. So I love Peter's spirit. And, again, we think that he gets out and he walks on flat sea. That's where the waves are like up and down. No wonder he freaked out. No wonder at any one point in time, Jesus is like, okay, here we go. Oh, man, you had faith to get out of the boat. I don't know why you freaked out when you saw some waves. And Peter's like, yeah, I don't know. Can we just go now? To feel faith, listen to me, you got to get out of the boat. If you really want the feeling of faith, you got to get out of the boat. So a lot of us are disappointed with faith because we want to feel it and we don't know if we felt it. It goes like this. Faith is very simple. It's got a couple of simple components to it. You've got a place where you start from, right? It's where we all are. It's where Peter's in the boat. We all start from one particular place where we are, and we want to get to a place where we haven't been yet. So here's the second part of faith. Second part of faith is where we want to be. This is like walking on water for Peter. He wants to walk on water, so he's got to jump to get here. For us, it might be, man, we want to get here. Maybe it's the prognosis we want. Maybe it's the relationship we want restored. Whatever it is, it's that distance that we can't get to. And this is the thing. Between here and there's a midair. There's a middle spot. It's a gap. It's a difficulty. We can't get from here to there. Actually, let's give this a little bit of room, okay? We can't get from here to there. And a lot of times, what we want to do is when we're here and we say, God, I don't know. I really need to get from here to there. Oh, let's make this look nice, okay? Okay, that's much better. All right, so I want to get from here to there, and we can't. And we think, well, maybe for a lot of us, well, God, I'll trust you, but I'll also do this a little bit too. I'll see if I can stretch. Maybe I can get up. No, I can't get over there. That's what faith is. Faith can't stretch. You don't sit there and go, I believe. I'm gonna gin up enough faith. I'm gonna wish I can. No, it means at some point you've got to go, all right, wow, I did that. I can't believe I got from here to there. You've got to jump. Because this area here, this is where faith is born. The dead end. The no hope. I can't do this myself. It's that gap that we can't get over. And see, what we forget about faith, and this is where, again, I don't know if you're a big Oprah Winfrey fan, but I think this is where Oprah has messed us up. You got this idea of like, well, I need to be there, so I'm gonna wish real hard. Wish, hope. I think it's gonna happen. Oh, okay, yes, now I got what I wanted. So everything's fixated on what you want. That's not faith. See, faith is leaving what you know and then jumping toward what you think is going to be there, but it's you're trusting in God leading you to the right place, not in the thing itself. That's real faith. So it looks like this, okay? The midair faith looks like that. Yeah, isn't that great? It's like grace in motion, isn't it? Didn't it remind you of the Heisman Trophy or something? Or first man walking on the moon, like, oh. Look at here. Nothing. Real faith is letting go of the comfort of where you were. It means you're moving. It's uncomfortable. There's no solid ground. And then over here, you don't have the assurance yet of it actually happening. See, a lot of times, the midair faith, we forget that midair faith is the most important aspect of the whole faith process. See, we think, okay, well, God's like a vending machine. I'm going to order what I want and put in enough faith credits and I'm going to get what I want. That's not how faith works. Faith works like this. I'm going to jump from where I started from where I'm comfortable, and I'm going to aim in this direction, but I'm going to leave the results to God. Why? Because he's a genius, okay? He knows what we need before we ask, and so even if we're like, okay, well, I want this particular thing, I jump toward it, and God says, I know you want that, but I'm going to give you what you need, and this is more important. And so I say, all right, God, I'm jumping, I'm leaping, but I'll rely on you for the end of it. See, faith is not a measurement of how badly you want something. You've got to trust in God's will, not in what you want. And that's what makes faith so hard, honestly. It's not, you'll have everything you need. It's more like, you'll have brief anxiety if you just believe. It's true. It's true. Y'all want the feeling of faith? Do you really want to know what it feels like to have faith? It's mild nausea. It's really what it is. You just feel nauseous because you want to trust and you feel like, but God, I really want this. And you've left security. You're not at assurance. You're kind of in the middle. But see, that's the conversation of God. How do we know that God speaks to us? Because I start here and then I jump here. And when I get onto the other side, that feeling of landing faith is awesome. It's a feeling of like, whoa, he answered. It works. Oh my goodness, God, you did something. So the next time someone says, well, I don't really feel like God's talking to me. Yeah, well, he just did something crazy in my life. Let me tell you about it. That's God's conversation. When we first got married, my wife and I had about 6 months left of schooling. And so we went up to school together, and we had X amount of money in the bank, okay? And that money was supposed to like pay for a couple classes, our insurance, like all kinds of stuff. And it was like, I don't know if that's gonna be enough. So she had some like part-time work. I had some part-time work, but I had like full-time school. And so we didn't even have a job yet, okay? I was graduating in May, didn't even have a job, didn't know if this whole thing called marriage and financially whether it was gonna work. So it was like, whew, man. So in the middle of this, my wife's like, yeah, so we got a tithe too. And I'm like, right. So tithing, if you're not familiar with it, is basically, okay, so if you have X amount of money, you take 1/10 of it and you take the first 10th of it and you say, God, we're gonna give this to you. So you tithe it to a church or you tithe it to wherever you feel like God's telling you to tithe it to. And so you give it 10%, boom. So when my wife's like, yeah, well, we got a tithe, I was like, yeah. But in my head, I'm thinking, can we just do this when we're more rich? okay? Because we don't have anything. We don't have any money. Can I just make up for this later when I have money? Because right now it just seems like we're just rubbing nickels together, right? But my wife is the smartest person I've ever met. She's a very, very sharp individual. So I was like, yep, it's what we got to do. And I like brave-faced it and everything. It was a risky thing. And there were times where I felt like we were in the middle of the air and where it felt nauseous. It felt like, God, are you going to come through on this? No joke. In May of that year, we had a job, and we had the same amount in the bank that we had when we started. And my wife is a chemistry teacher, sharp lady. She even says today, I have no idea how that happened. I have no idea how that worked. But I do. It's because we put our faith into practice, and it was risky. And listen, I have a story now. I just share with you a story of God's faithfulness. So every time I feel like it's a dry spell or I'm not really feeling where God's coming from on stuff, I can go back to those stories of how God's been faithful in the past. And it only comes with risk. And that's why I'm saying, look, we've got to leap. We've got to jump. All of us can feel faith, every person in this room. And by the way, you don't have to be a believer to express faith. Some people say, well, wait a second, no, shouldn't I at least be a Christian or a Jesus follower before I start putting faith? No, I'd say try the faith out first and see what happens. Because that's exciting. So try this, and I've got a couple things I'm gonna suggest to you. A couple of things are gonna step on your toes. That's all right. There's no shame, no guilt. All I'm talking about is opportunity, especially this first thing, okay? Listen, again, this is not about guilting anybody. It's not about making anybody feel bad. It's about pointing out an opportunity that we have to show faith. First example, let's say you're engaged. And you're engaged, and you're all happy you're gonna get married in August or September or whatever it is, and you're picking out invitations, and you're doing all this stuff, and you're living together. And so, maybe it's your mother-in-law or grandparents or whatever, they're saying, well, you shouldn't be living together. You should live together after you're married. And actually, the Bible's pretty clear on that too, that you shouldn't sleep together before you get married. That's God's best, okay? Again, no guilt, no condemnation, much more of what if your faith told you to take a leap? You might say, there's the kids involved, and what about apartment, and there's money, and there's all this. Yeah, there's risk. What if today you decided to jump and said, okay, God, I'll listen to you and not my culture and not what's convenient. I'll listen to you, and I'll see what happens. We'll try it. I've known people who've done this. They've actually moved out, and they got married, and they said, that was the best thing we've ever done. Why? Because God blesses faith. Without faith, it's impossible to please God. And it might be something much, much smaller than that. It might be something like inviting somebody to church for the first time. You don't want people to know at work that you're like a Jesus freak, but why not? Take a step, take a leap. Maybe it's something big like adopting a child. You've been talking about it for a while. Maybe it's time to start really praying about that. Maybe it's something radical. You have been kind of getting close emotionally to a person at work, and it's kind of feeling weird. It's getting a little mushy there, and then at home things are really bad, and the person you're married to, you feel distant. Your leap of faith might be, I'm putting in for I'm going to transition departments to somewhere else. I'm going to move away from this person, or I'm just going to get a different job. That's a risk. That's a huge risk. But watch how God bless it. And I'm saying this, stop playing it so safe. You want to feel faith? Get risky with it. See, because a lot of times, faith is that nagging thought in the back of our mind. I really should be doing this. I really should be doing this. Man, we should probably homeschool these kids, because I feel them drifting. Maybe you should. Maybe it's the small stuff like reporting your tips or not getting paid under the table. Or when you buy that used car, you go to the notary, you report the actual value of the car and you don't cheat out the government because you want to pay less in taxes. Maybe it's huge, like telling somebody about your addiction today. Or admitting you're wrong or confessing a sin to a friend. Or maybe you're just about to retire and you've got thousands of dollars saved up for that amazing dream trip, and maybe it's saying, hey, let's talk about this. What if we spend a few months down in Haiti and help with some relief efforts instead? That's a big risk. It's a big jump. Maybe for you, it's getting baptized. Maybe you sat here long enough, you listened to this enough, you've heard Jason, you've heard Matt, you've heard David, and you're like, I really should start following Jesus. Maybe today is the day where you say, Jesus, I'm deciding to follow you. I'm gonna put my trust in you finally. Maybe that's where you're leaping today. Because you know what, really what it comes down to is this. It's an honest question. What are we doing? What are we doing when we come here week after week and we listen to faith and then don't practice it? I mean, if you never live out your faith and all you have are ideas, all you've got is an alibi. That's all you've got. Like spiritual voyeurs, we come here and we watch over the shoulder of people who actually practice faith, and then we go home and don't live it out ourselves. And we hear stories about Abraham. With God's help, he packed up his family and started a whole new nation. With God's help, Moses stood up to a Pharaoh and said, hey, my people, you can't keep them as slaves anymore. With God's help, he did that. With God's help, David faced down a giant. With God's help, Daniel went to the king and practiced civil disobedience and said, I'm going to pray the way that God told me to pray and not people tell me to pray. With God's help, Peter said, I want to come to you, Jesus. And see, God done this over and over again in the past. Is he finished? Is the Bible a museum piece that we look back on, or are you the Bible? Are you the Bible come to life? Did he do it back then so it can be done again in our lives? Yes. If he did it before with regular people, why wouldn't he do it again in lives like us? I mean, that's the whole point. It's written down. Sometimes we treat the scriptures like a Netflix series that we binge watch, and be like, oh, that was interesting. What's on next? The Bible was written to acquaint us with history, stuff that really happened. I mean, this stuff happened outside the pages of the Bible. You can look in history and see this stuff that actually happened. So God wrote it down to show us he did it before, and he can do it again in the lives of people who have faith. That's you and me. So what I want us to do, on the way in, you got one of these. If God did it before so that he can do it again. During this last song, I'd love for you to just sit down and say, all right, God, so what's my jump? What is my leap? Where are you calling me to jump away from and into? This is how it's gonna go. I'm gonna pray. When I'm done praying, guys are gonna come out and they're gonna kind of do a little mellow music just for a little while. We're gonna have on the screens this thing here and just kind of give you a time to pull this out, take a pen, and write out, what is your leap this week? So this week, what are you gonna do? Where are you gonna jump? You're gonna take this home, stick it in your mirror, stick it in your visor, maybe take a picture of it and keep it on your phone or share it with somebody. That's the real test of whether or not you're gonna do it. Hey, this week, I'm gonna do this. Click, and you send it to somebody. You hashtag it, do whatever you need to do. But you take this home and say, this is my jump. I got no excuses. This is what I'm gonna do this week. So you're gonna take a few minutes to think through that, and then we're gonna sing this last song. And I'm gonna pray that God really needles you to say, okay, I'm done with faith being in my head, and I'm gonna start practicing it in my life. Let's pray. Father, I know that even saying stuff like this, God, it's risky business because, God, I know there's so many things that I need to be doing. So many things that I need to be taking a risk on and stepping out in faith. But God, I pray that as we take these next few moments to just think through what it is that you're speaking to us, I pray, Father, that your Holy Spirit would push us. And that deep down inside, we would know what it is that you are pressing us to be doing. Where is the leap that we should be taking, God? Because, Lord, we don't want dormant faith. We don't want to just have a bunch of alibis in our head for how we behaved in life. God, instead, we want to see you at work. And so I pray that you would give us the guts to write down what it is that we should be leaping in. And I pray that this week you would give us the follow through on achieving that. So thanks for this time, Lord. This time to just sit and talk to you and to hear from you. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.